show you a quick and easy way to add great effects to your gaming table using pigments. This is the second of the 2-foot by 2-foot tables I'm making for Dead Man's Hand using the new range of pre-painted 28mm buildings for the Old West produced by Foreground. I've glued down all of the building bases and boardwalks and base coated and dry brushed the ground. You can see the details of these early steps on the DMH hobby blog on the Gebg website. There's a link for this in the description. The materials I'm going to use today are white spirit, a soft brush, some stiff brushes, and Pro Pigments weathering powders. These pigments are great to work with. They're of a fine quality. In the description there's a link to our web shop where you can buy them. I've used raw umber, raw sienna, and yellow ochre. You need about a whole pot of the main colour, raw umber, and quite a lot less of the others. You can apply these straight from the pot and also mix them before application. Just take your time. Don't be too afraid of using too much pigment. Have some fun. You're going to get very messy, I think. And as I said, don't worry about using too much pigment, because once we do the following stage to applying the pigment, you can remove any excess quite easily. The process is very simple, as I've described. I just use a brush to move my pigment around and blend it as I wish. I also have a palette on hand for when I want to mix the colours, but just to start with, I'm just going to get some pigment down. And this whole process is the main part of the work. This will take up the most time. You can see I'm applying it quite liberally, and we're a bit windy outside, so it's blowing around. If you're doing this inside, make sure you use some protective cover, because this is pure artist's paint pigment, and if you get it on the carpet or on your clothes, it's going to stain. In the recesses where dirt may gather, such as by the steps, you might want to put a little bit more pigment and make it a little heavier. I'd avoid using your very light yellow ochre colour in these areas. But just set yourself a good half hour to complete this stage. I'll show you what some of the blending might look like now. You can just take a lighter colour pigment, and take a bit more. You see, we can just blend that in, and then once you do that, you can take an even lighter pigment, maybe mix it in with your medium colour, and just blend it in. Now it just looks like some dirt on your terrain at the moment, but once you do the next stage and blend all of this in, that's what the white spirit does. The white spirit will do all the work for you and produce these really lovely dirt effects. You don't want to cover the whole board with your pigments. Because you've got a decent base colour, you want to leave some of that showing through in places so you'll get a really nice natural look. You want to leave patches lightly touched or not at all by the pigments. Now I like to, in more travelled sections such as this main street and the side street, I like to do more blending in the, if you like, in the street section, just to make it look well travelled. Finished applying the pigments, and it looks now as though I've just dumped some painting pigments on the table and moved them around a bit. Essentially that's what I've done. It's really easy to do. Now you may want to fine touch your blending as you go along, but I wouldn't worry too much about it, because it's this next stage which will really reward you, and then after this stage you will be able to blend the pigments a bit more. Now this stage you really just dab your white spirit all over your gaming table. I take care not to move the pigment around too much, because I can do that after all this is dry. Again, as I've explained on the Dead Man's Hand hobby blog, on the piece entitled Building the Set, this whole process of building the entire board, from raw materials through this pigment stage, through the drying stage, to the finished product, takes me in all about 3 hours. Naturally that excludes drying time. It's quite a lot of drying time. I will let this one dry perhaps for a whole day before I move on to it, maybe a little bit less. But this whole table should take about 3 hours. Now, again, this is kind of looking like a congealed mass of painting pigments at the moment, which it really is. But once it's dry and we get to the next stage, you'll see it really come to life. So now your table's all dry. This one, in the heat of a summer's day, only took a couple of hours to dry. And now you've got a very simple task of just doing a little extra blending, because all this powder's now dry and it'll come off. So that's why I'm using a soft brush this time. You just want to, in places where you think the blending isn't too tight, you just want to use a soft brush. Now I like to leave some of the thicker dirt in place and not thin it out. But there will be places, such as over here, where maybe it's a bit too heavy, and you'll just want to loosen it up a bit. You can even just blow on it, just to take some of the pigment off. Again, this process isn't going to take very much time at all, but take your time, enjoy it, have fun, and just experiment. Once you've completed this part of the task, you may want to go back and just dust on little bits where you feel it needs it. I think this one's turned out pretty well, and actually I'm pretty happy with that. The last thing that you'll do is to seal it with a spray varnish. I use Tester's Dull Coat. So we've done a couple of coats of varnish, and now we're just going to add on a couple of extra little stages of weathering powder, just in case you think you need it in some places. So you might have a place there where you think you need a little bit more blending. So just dust some off with I'm using a slightly stiffer brush this time, so that I can quickly remove excess powder that I don't need. And so you just do this in various places wherever you felt like it, and then you're pretty much done. Now I will give the gaming area a final varnish, and then I'll add some flowers. So I've got some flowers from the Great Escape Games store, and I'll add various tufts as well, just to give the gaming area a little bit of vegetation. These particular tufts are dead easy to use. You just take one of the tufts from the backing paper, I always like to think about where I'm going to locate it, so that's where I'm going to put that one. PVA glue on the back of the tuft, just press it in place. You may have areas, I've got an area here where I've got a bit of texture that I don't particularly like, so you might want to hide that a little bit or break it up a little bit, again just by using a couple of tufts. There's a link to the section of the Great Escape Games store where the tufts are located, and if you look on the building the set part of the blog, part of the Dead Man's Hand blog, then you'll see exactly which tufts I used. And you're just going to use these tufts in various places, just to break up the earth look of the board. I particularly enjoy using flowers, so I've got a tendency to always add flowers to any painting or modelling project that I'm doing at the moment. I'm just in one of those phases. Flowers are dead easy to use. They come in strips like this, and all you do is you cut off a section that you want to use, then cut down the middle to the desired length. I'm going to do really, because I want to transport this table a lot, I'm going to do very, very short flowers, very short stems. And it's nice to have these located, especially around the backs of buildings and on the sides. And so what I always tend to do is keep them quite close to the wall as well, so that they'll stay in place nicely and not get damaged, especially during transportation. Of course, I use PVA glue because it dries nice and clear. And it's really, really durable when it's dry. This is a view of the finished gaming board. I've still got one more building to put together, but you can have a good view of the groundwork and how the tufts and flowers just really set it off nicely. This gives you a good idea of how it looks with the painted foreground buildings in place. Thanks for watching. Again, if you look at the description part just below the video, you'll be able to see some links to where you can get some more information about this and some of the products that I used.